Welcome back to Dark Scary Stories. If you're new here, make sure to subscribe to our channel for more terrifying tales that will haunt you long after the video ends. Today, I'm sharing an absolutely chilling story about a man whose apartment began to shrink around him in ways that defy explanation. This is not just a paranormal experience, it's a descent into absolute nightmare. Don't miss a single moment of what's about to unfold. My name is Marcus, and I'm telling you this story because I need someone to understand what happened to me. I need someone to know that what I experienced was real, that I'm not insane, and that there might be others going through the same inexplicable horror right now. It started on a Thursday morning. I woke up in my apartment like any other day. The same 2-bedroom, 1-bathroom place I'd lived in for 7 years. Everything was normal. The sunlight filtered through my bedroom window. I could hear traffic from the street below. My coffee maker sat on the kitchen counter exactly where it always was. But something felt different. I couldn't quite put my finger on it, but the air felt heavier. The light seemed dimmer, as if the apartment itself had changed its mood overnight. I brushed it off as paranoia. We all have those days where everything feels slightly off, right? I went about my morning routine. I showered, got dressed, and made breakfast. It wasn't until I was sitting at my kitchen table with a cup of coffee that I noticed it. The distance from my table to the kitchen counter seemed shorter than I remembered. Not dramatically shorter, just an inch or two. I stood up and measured it with my eyes, comparing it to the chair I always sat in. My heart began to race for no logical reason. I was being ridiculous. The kitchen was the same size it had always been. But throughout that day, I couldn't shake the feeling. I found myself pacing the apartment, trying to memorize distances, trying to convince myself that my mind was playing tricks on me. The hallway from the bedroom to the living room, had it always been that narrow? The distance between the couch and the television, was it closer now than yesterday? I kept telling myself I was being irrational. People don't suddenly have their apartments shrink around them. That's not how reality works. That night, I decided to do something I'd never done before. I measured my apartment. I pulled out a tape measure from the closet and systematically measured every room, every wall, every distance that mattered. My bedroom was 14 feet by 12 feet. The living room was 16 feet by 18 feet. The kitchen was 10 feet by 12 feet. I wrote everything down in a notebook with precise measurements, marking the date and time. If my apartment was somehow changing, I would have proof. I locked the notebook away in a drawer and tried to sleep, but rest wouldn't come. Every sound the apartment made, the pipes creaking, the floorboards settling, felt ominous. Every shadow seemed to hold something sinister. I lay awake most of the night, listening to my own breathing, wondering if I was losing my mind. The next morning, I measured again. The bedroom was now 14 feet by 11 feet and 10 inches. That was 2 inches shorter on one side. I measured 3 times to be absolutely sure. My hands were shaking. I moved through the apartment with my tape measure, checking every measurement I'd recorded. The living room had shrunk as well. It was now 15 feet and 9 inches by 17 feet and 10 inches. The kitchen was smaller too. Every single room in my apartment had contracted, and the contraction was precise, measurable, undeniable. I called in sick to work. I spent the entire day checking my measurements, remeasuring, triple-checking. The results were consistent. My apartment was getting smaller. Not metaphorically. Literally. Physically. The walls were moving inward. I called my landlord that afternoon. I told him that something was wrong with my apartment, that the dimensions seemed to have changed. He laughed. He actually laughed. He said I was being ridiculous, that apartments don't change size, that stress and anxiety can make us perceive things incorrectly. When I insisted, he became annoyed and told me that if I wanted to break my lease, I could, but I'd lose my security deposit. He hung up. I sat on my couch for hours, staring at nothing. My measurements spread out before me on the coffee table. The numbers didn't lie. The apartment was shrinking, and if it continued shrinking at the same rate, it would become uninhabitable in a matter of weeks. By the fourth day, the contraction had accelerated. Each room was losing several inches daily. The doorways were becoming narrower. The hallway was now so tight that I could touch both walls if I stretched my arms out. The ceiling seemed lower. I could almost touch it if I stood on my toes. The apartment was suffocating me. I started researching obsessively. I looked up structural damage, settling foundations, chemical reactions, and building materials. Anything that could explain what was happening. Nothing made sense. Buildings don't shrink. Walls don't move inward on their own. There had to be a logical explanation. On the seventh day, I noticed something that made my blood run cold. The windows were smaller. Not just appearing smaller due to the walls moving in, the actual window frames had contracted. The panes of glass had reduced in size. The window that used to look out onto a busy street now framed only a narrow sliver of the world outside. I called 911. The police arrived within 20 minutes. I showed them my measurements, showed them my notes. I begged them to verify that my apartment was shrinking. The two officers looked at me with a mixture of pity and concern. One of them said, "Sir, your apartment looks normal to me. The dimensions seem standard for this type of building." But I knew they were wrong. I showed them how narrow the hallway was, how low the ceiling had become. They suggested I see a doctor. One officer even suggested I might be experiencing a psychotic break. After they left, I realized something terrifying. They couldn't perceive the changes. Their measurements contradicted mine. They said the hallway was a normal width. They said the ceiling was a normal height. But I could see it. I could feel it. Every day the walls came closer. Every day the space around me diminished. I stopped going to work. My boss called several times, confused about my absence. I couldn't explain it to him. How could I? I was trapped in an apartment that was collapsing inward, that was becoming smaller with each passing hour, and no one else could see it happening. By day 10, the living room and bedroom were barely distinguishable anymore. The walls had come so close that I could walk from one end of the apartment to the other in just a few steps. The kitchen was no more than 6 feet by 6 feet. The bathroom felt like a closet. I had to crouch to move through the hallway. The ceiling was now only 6 feet high, and in some places lower. I sat in the center of what used to be my living room, surrounded by the walls that were slowly crushing me, and I began to understand. This wasn't a physical phenomenon. No one else could see it because it wasn't real to them. It was real only to me. The apartment was shrinking in my perception, in my reality, but not an objective reality. But knowing that didn't make it any less terrifying. On day 12, I couldn't stand up straight anywhere in the apartment. The walls were so close that I had to lie on my side to fit in most rooms. The ceiling had come down so low that my face was nearly touching it. I couldn't move. I couldn't escape. The apartment had become a coffin. That's when I heard it. a sound like the walls breathing, a wet, organic sound, as if the apartment itself had become alive. The walls began to change texture. They became soft, fleshy, warm to the touch. The floor beneath me became sticky, like flesh. I was no longer in an apartment. I was inside something living, something that was digesting me. I tried to scream, but my throat closed up. I tried to move, but the walls pressed against every part of my body. I was being absorbed into the structure of the building. My consciousness began to fragment. I didn't know if I was still me or if I had become part of the apartment. When I came to, I was lying in a hospital bed. A psychiatrist was sitting across from me. She explained that I had suffered a severe psychotic episode and had been hospitalized for 3 days after neighbors reported hearing screaming from my apartment. According to her, I had covered every surface of my apartment in chalk measurements. The walls were covered with numbers, with desperate calculations. I had apparently been trying to map out the apartment as it shrunk, but there was nothing there. Just the ravings of a disturbed mind. They gave me medication, antipsychotics. They told me I would be fine, that with proper treatment, these delusions would fade away. I was released after 2 weeks with prescriptions and a recommendation to see a therapist 3 times a week. I went back to my apartment. Everything looked normal. The measurements I had written on the walls had been painted over by the building management. The kitchen was the standard size. The living room was spacious. The hallway was wide. My apartment was exactly as it had always been. But I knew the truth. I knew what I had experienced was real, even if no one else could see it. The medication they gave me, it's helping me function, helping me pretend that everything is normal. But sometimes, late at night, I measure my apartment again. I pull out a tape measure and I check the walls. And sometimes, just for a moment, I swear I can feel them getting closer. The strange thing is, I'm not the only one. I've found online forums, hidden in the deepest corners of the internet, where other people describe the exact same experience. An apartment that shrinks, walls that close in, a reality that only they can perceive. We're all on the same medication. We're all seeing the same doctors. We're all being told we're insane. But what if we're not? What if there's something out there that feeds on the space around us, that distorts our perception of our own homes, that traps us in a collapsing reality? What if the medication is just a way to make us forget, to make us compliant, so we stop resisting? I don't know anymore. I don't know what's real and what's a delusion. But I do know that I can feel my apartment getting smaller. I know it even though I'm on the medication. I know it even though every measurement I take shows that everything is normal. And I know that soon, very soon, the walls will be close enough to touch again. And this time, I won't be able to escape. If you're experiencing something similar, if your reality feels like it's collapsing around you, if you're the only one who can see what's happening, know that you're not alone. We're out here. We're watching. We're waiting. And we're all wondering the same thing. When will the walls finally close in completely? That was the story of Marcus and his shrinking apartment. If this tale unsettled you as much as it did us, hit that subscribe button and turn on notifications so you never miss a new story. What did you think? Share your thoughts in the comments below. Dark, scary stories, where nightmares become reality. Thank you for watching.